One.
I'm Dirk Strongman, most dangerous man on earth. It's story time. The story comes from my little book, Wild and Free on the Lower East Side, 9 true stories from the 70s and 80s in New York City. Of importance here is the introduction, 2 brief paragraphs, the introduction to the book. And by the way, the book has been through fire, hail, washed ashore, washed up and left for dead. Okay. Introduction. I feel painfully saddened that important people in our lives, places that mold us, events that shape our characters, and the circumstances from which we select our destinies, fade into the past as though they never existed. Moreover, some things are just flat out too good to let go without attempting to immortalize them. In this book, I attempted to immortalize certain people, places, events, and circumstances that I believe have faded too rapidly from the world. These true, unique stories represent the struggle for freedom, the will to survive, and the power to love in the cold, hard light of day. August 2004. This story takes place in the early 1980s, 81, 82, something like that. It's called Lou DeRusso. It's about knife juggling and knife throwing. Lou DeRusso. I'm going to show you the title page. The story of Lou DeRusso. You see the picture of a dagger. Okay, and an opening quote. I thoroughly disapprove of duels. If a man should challenge me, I would take him kindly and forgivingly by the hand and lead him to a quiet place and kill him. Mark Twain. I knew Lou DeRusso from the apple stand that I worked at on the Lower East Side of New York City. Lou bought cider now and then, but mostly hung out and shared our fermented cider, our smoke, and jokes. Lou was a fine artist of the painter variety, with an obsession for wild exotic women, and he consumed considerable quantities of beer. The more beer he drank, the more he contemplated lust's virtues, and the more horrors turned into objects of his fascination. For days on end, he drank beer in his crumbling, dimly lit apartment with women eating at his brain. He squinted his eyes until he found a spot on the walls where cracks and peeled plaster insinuated the shapes of female body parts. Then he, as he put it, brought the women out of the wall by painting them right on it, fresco style. In the end, his paintings looked like women about to step into the shadows and come to life. Lou said he could almost see them do it when he drank enough. I told him he was a regular Van Gogh, but he said that Van Gogh was more like it. Lou also had a talent for getting attacked on the streets. It was never his fault, he said. It happened so much that he stashed weapons all over the neighborhood. A piece of pipe stuck behind a trash can here, a broken bottle stuck under a discarded rug there. Any block that Lou walked on, he knew where the nearest club, a glass shard, or pipe lay hidden. Late nights, he would just stroll down the middles of the streets holding a weapon, but then even I did that a few times. On one summer day, I had got up early and attempted to move out of the city, having given up all my attachments to it. But by the end of the day, I had a new apartment on the corner of Avenue C and 9th Street, and I had moved in. Rapid turns of events, yes, but if you're slow, you blow, and I didn't blow. Lou didn't know where I lived now, and I didn't know anybody in my new building. My apartment was number 2C, which faced the 9th Street on the 4th floor, if you count the ground floor. The street below my windows actualized just about anything you can imagine, continuously, in the middle of a blasted out, burned, self-governing, rough justice section of town. Just about anything. Just about anything you can imagine, such as exploding firecrackers, gunshots, boom boxes all tuned to the same station, fire hydrants pouring onto the street, drug deals, sirens, buses, car horns that play tunes, and hordes of white, black, and brown people hanging out and laughing, fighting, talking, playing craps against the side of the building, urinating against the curb, carrying musical instruments, playing musical instruments, drinking, smoking joints, dancing, breaking into windows from fire escapes, standing watch for organized drug operations, going to other jobs, going to church, changing clothes, sleeping on the sidewalk, stealing, scamming, victim scouting, nodding out or mumbling or scratching from heroin, arguing, or just talking loudly. Now, this activity went on 22 hours a day. Things quieted down from about 4 to 6 in the morning. The first night I slept there, I sat on the floor and leaned on a windowsill, watching a building burn across the street. One of the fire trucks arrived, playing the William Tell Overture instead of blowing a siren, and had a big rubber Godzilla monster on the roof. Now the point is, I liked my new place. 5 rooms for $200 a month. Right in the middle of perhaps the most diverse, active, volatile, and creative neighborhood in New York City. And I had a ringside seat. The second Saturday that I lived there, I got up late and I smoked a fat joint. Then I sat on my mattress and practiced playing my bass without plugging it into anything. After about a half hour, it slowly occurred to me that amid the usual noise, a prolonged and serious argument progressed below my window. And all the while, somebody kept yelling for somebody named George. Now finally, I put down my bass and I looked out. I'll be damned if it wasn't Lou down there in the middle of the street yelling for George. I had no idea who George was, but I could see why Lou yelled for him. 3 Puerto Rican guys had Lou surrounded. 2 held broken bottles in their hands, and with the bottles they prodded Lou toward a third guy who swung an open 007 knife from a long piece of rope. 007 knives cost $6, and in the late 70s you could buy them in most corner bodega stores on the Lower East Side. They had wooden handles with a rope hole at the butt end and a 7-inch single-edged locking blade. How Lou got into this predicament was one question, and how he prevented injury for a half hour was another. And who the hell is George? I pushed up my rickety wood-framed window. Lou's 3 assailants circled him slowly, poking at him and swinging the knife. Every time he tried to escape, they blocked his way. He couldn't even get any weapons that he might have had stashed in the area. Some people stood at a distance and watched. Others just walked by minding their own business. Oddly, though, the typical Ninth Street crowd seemed to have almost completely disappeared. I was going to have to be Lou's salvation. Me. All right. Now, a year earlier, I had sold exotic items on the sidewalk over at Cooper Union Square by St. Mark's Place and 3rd Avenue. Items such as antique Japanese stationery, origami kits, bamboo folding stools, knives, hookahs, Indian incense, Thai leather art, beady cigarettes. Lou often claimed that in the early 80s, I had actually started the trend of selling things on the sidewalk in the entire St. Mark's Place area. Lou might be right about that. Everything I sold, I picked up from a man named Eddie, who owned a 3rd Avenue store called Sindori Imports at about 11th Street. Eddie had originally suggested to me, take from the store whatever you like, and that you think people would buy, take it somewhere in the general neighborhood and sell it on a blanket, and then later pay me a wholesale price and get more to sell. And he had added, the concept is ripe for the doing here in the area, but nobody has done it yet. My things need to get out there to the people who will want them, and you can make some money at it. You'll run your own business, you'll meet people you need to meet, and maybe you'll start a local street peddling trend, and poor people will have another way to make a living. This is America. This is your right. And I want to see you do it. It's a suggestion. I had done what Eddie suggested. So while Lou may be correct that I was the first to carry on such sidewalk business in the area, the idea was Eddie's. It turned out that I made a decent and respectable living at it for a year or so, and more Lower East Side denizens showed up with their own things to sell. It felt free, it felt communal, it felt real. Then in a couple of years, the rapidly growing practice increasingly involved trash. Peddlers would sell what trash they could sell and then just walk away. Soon heaps of trash cluttered the sidewalks and the actual streets, starting at Cooper Union Square, going down St. Mark's Place to 3rd Avenue, and then around the corner over to 7th Street. Ignorant heathens! In a little more than 5 years, the worsening eyesore turned the whole thing sour, and it drew the attention of people who make a living at legislating how the rest of us make a living. Local sidewalk business fell under the regulation of law. Now St. Mark's Place, even now, St. Mark's Place storefront owners, supposedly under the control of licensure mandates, conduct the warp and woof of St. Mark's sidewalk business. Anyway, back in the golden high time of St. Mark's street peddling, one of the products I sold was handmade knives from India. My knives have served as good throwing knives, although I doubt they were made for that purpose. Typically, throwing knives are properly balanced, flat, single pieces of hardened steel with dual edges. My Indian knives, however, had 3-inch wooden handles and brass guards, and about 9-inch long, symmetrical, pointy, dual-edged blades. In other words, they looked like daggers. Yet 3 inches is not long enough for a very functional handle, so the knives clearly did not work well as fighting daggers, only as a thrusting dagger. However, they were also perfectly balanced, even more so than most throwing knives I've ever had. And even more confusingly, their steel was soft and their edges were dull, although their points were sharp as all hell. You know, they were good-looking knives with no clear purpose other than thrusting into somebody's guts. I actually used them for juggling. I want to show you something. Right here is one of them. Right here. This is one such knife. I have used this one for juggling. Is that good? Or is it a player?
That's good.
It's fine?
Yeah.
All right. Now, the tape I have put on myself. All right. Okay. You see, no sharp, not sharp. However, pointy as all hell. Now, that's one of them. You know, they were good-looking knives with no clear purpose other than gut thrusting. I actually used them for juggling. But I had sharpened both edges on one of them in a rough and jagged manner, and that one I had stuck into my windowsill. I have that one here too. Let's have a look. All right, here. This is the one in the story. The one that I had sharpened. You see, it has a sheath on it, a cheapo sheath. There we go. Is that okay, Allie?
Yes.
All right. Easy. Sharp. A little dull through time now. This is the one I'm talking about in this story. Do you want it closer? See that? Okay. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. Continuing. I had that knife right there stuck into my windowsill. This sharpened knife would have to be loose in a moment, but I wasn't going down there unless I absolutely had to. From that flashlight, I have a big spot in my eyes. Kind of hard to see right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My option was to throw it to him and hope that he got it. What if I threw it down and one of the other guys got it, though? That wouldn't be good for Lou. What if he caught it, but it cut his hand? Not good for Lou. What if it landed on the asphalt and the unhardened point bent? Not good for Lou. What if a knife only would cause more problems? Not good for Lou. What if the other three guys saw me throw it? Not good for me. What if I yelled down and asked Lou if he wanted it? Not good for me or Lou. But I had to follow through with this, you see? No matter what. A man is a friend only if he'd actually come through in a mortal situation, regardless of its claims otherwise. I pulled the knife out of the sill, poked my head out the window. I cleared my throat loudly. Lou didn't hear me. I did it again, more loudly. Lucky us, only Lou picked up on it and he looked straight at me. I hoped that the three banditos wouldn't look up and see me too. Lucky for us, Lou and I, they just took the opportunity to drive more at Lou. They must have figured that Lou still expected the elusive George to save him. I held up the knife and raised my eyebrows inquisitively. Lou gritted his teeth and made a growling sound. I didn't know for sure what the growling sound meant, so I gave him another inquisitive look. This time he clenched one fist in the other and growled desperately. Clearly a, "Yes, goddammit, give me the power." He resumed dodging the bottles and the 007. But now came the hard part, getting the knife down to him. I got a bright idea. If I put a sheath on it, it wouldn't cut him. Lou wouldn't get cut, so I sheathed the thing like you saw me just do. Well, now I had to throw it down. But I didn't want to show my face as I did it. Hopefully I would throw it to Lou, and hopefully he would see it coming and catch it. Better that than to hit him with it on his head. I intended to plant the weapon directly into Lou's hand, even if neither of us were looking. Then he could take it from there. I wondered if he even knew my plan. I looked out the window again. Lou still dodged around in the middle of the street, about 35 feet down. I backed away and mentally calculated distance, gravity, azimuth, wind speed, air resistance, target movement and direction, and knife balance. I threw it. Then I looked. The knife flipped promisingly through the air. Lou wasn't looking. Nobody was looking. It was a good throw. It headed straight down toward him. When the knife got to about 5 feet above his head, he looked up and held out his hand. The handle of the knife smacked his palm, and he closed his fingers around it. Lou held the knife out at chest level, one hand on the knife handle and the other on the sheath, and brazenly informed his assailants, "Now I've got mine, motherfuckers. Now I've got mine." Then he faced each in turn and challenged, "You don't want me to pull the sheath off this, now do you? Come on, motherfucker. Don't unsheath it unless you're going to stick it, and don't stick it unless you kill. That's the rule." You should have been there. I tell you, I guess the three Bandito brothers understood Lou's command of that rule. But moreover, I guess they suddenly got religious, because they looked straight up into the air and then back at the sheathed weapon in Lou's hand. As far as they knew right then, God's other name was George. They scattered like cockroaches when you lift the toilet seat. Lou stuck the knife in his back pocket and took off up the street toward Avenue B. I watched, and as he got halfway up the block, a police car cruised up behind him and stopped. 2 cops got out and gave Lou shit about the knife sticking out of his pocket, and then they took it. But Lou argued. He waved his arms in the air, demonstrating how it all happened. He pointed down the block to my window. The cops looked and saw me. Then they gave the knife back to Lou and they left. Where are they when you need them? Instead of the knife, I should have thrown down a box full of donuts. Cops would have gathered like cockroaches. A few hours later, Lou came by and yelled up my window for me. I dropped it down my key and he came on upstairs. He gave me back my knife, stated his utmost appreciation and respect for me, and he said he owed me his life. He also wanted to learn whatever I knew about throwing knives, although he too seriously practiced the skill. I told him I didn't know anything special. It was all just that fat joint I had smoked. We all know that marijuana improves judgment, right? Well, it at least helped to serve new and improved judgment onto Lou's 3 Bandito brothers. I told Lou all that I knew. That skillful knife throwing amounted to a good balance to knife and a lot of practice. No news there. I also told him that if he really wanted to learn knife handling, he should buy a couple of mine and learn how to juggle them. I showed him my hands, sporting dozens of puncture wounds in various stages of freshness. But Lou had only inquired into the throwing part, and he said he'd just stick with that. Let me repeat that one last sentence, that one next to the last sentence. I showed him my hands, sporting dozens of puncture wounds in various stages of freshness. Now I'm showing you. Over the next few months, Lou came over sometimes and we practiced throwing knives into my walls and floor. He introduced me to a friend of his, my next door neighbor toward the back of the building, George Stonefish. As a member of the Native American Delaware tribe, George was a man of considerable stature and long-ass hair down to his ass. At first, though, George told me that he was of the Manhattan tribe, which made me feel quite white and guilty. Truth told, plainly he didn't like very many people. But when Lou told him about our story about the knife, George said I must have some Native American in me. And he said that he's not really a Manhattan. According to Lou and others, that meant he liked me now. And according to George, since I had saved one of his friends, I was now on a par with his friend. I felt like I'd satisfactorily passed through a set of initiation rites into the Native American George tribe. So anyway, that was George. I liked him, and I honored the tribal relations. Lou continued to swear that he owed me his life and that he was going to find a way to pay me back. Yet, in my opinion, I had done nothing but lazily smoke a joint, play my bass at home, and to the best of my ability, toss a knife out the window. I figured that such help belongs to the world, and that no debt should occur over it. To have not done the simple thing I'd done, I would have needed to have some convincing reason. And given my friendship with Lou, such a reason could not possibly have existed. Well, now that same sense of friendship naturally directed Lou to seek some way to reciprocate the deed. But insofar as Lou had already properly acknowledged the deed, and insofar as my life had no moments of mortal threat pop up in Lou's presence, I felt that he should stop referring to owing me anything, and on his behalf I grew weary of his continued vigilance and pledge-making. Well, it came about that on one snowy winter day I had just cleaned my old wooden floor when Lou showed up all wet and muddy. I figured he'd come to check in on my welfare and to remind me that if I need anything I should let him know. At the door I told him he was off the hook and that my life is fine and that he should stop coming around on the whole account. He pleaded to just simply come in, but I stood my ground, saying that he was all muddy and I had just cleaned my floor. And then he left. Instantly I felt deplorable and subhuman. I believed that I had damaged Lou's spirit. We never spoke of that. But about a year later, Lou said that he'd thrown knives every day since then. I said that's a cool thing. To Lou, it had now become a vital part of life, like digesting food. He invited me over to his place on 2nd Avenue in St. Mark's Place. I'd never been to his place before. I'd never even known where he lived. It turns out that he had a sizable single room on the 5th floor, as I recall, maybe 100 feet long by 30 feet wide. Exquisite paintings of nude women covered the cracked plaster on the walls. One end of the room faced a tiny courtyard area that was closed in by concrete walls as high as the building. From Lou's room, 3 tall center pivoting windows, French windows, opened it to that courtyard. A weather-beaten and partially rotted foam pole stood out there about 15 feet from the middle window. The top of the pole, which was just a little further up, had worn to a gray point. Lou told me to look out the window for something odd out there, something other than the pole. At first I saw only the concrete walls and the pole. Then I noticed an ancient-looking, leather-handled hunting knife buried deeply in the pole's dead center, sticking straight out at me. I looked at Lou. He nodded. "You?" I asked. He nodded again. "How'd you get it there?" He said, "I have no idea how to get down into the courtyard to climb the pole. There was only one way to get that knife out there." Now that's knife throwing. I raised my brows and I said, "I see. So, from where?" "The other end of the room," he said. "I practiced every day since you saved my life. I knew that I would only have one try at getting that knife out this window and into that pole. I stayed awake many nights thinking about it. Then one day I swung open the center window, walked to the back of the room, and I threw it. And now it's there for everybody to see until the pole is gone. Let them all wonder how and why it got there. I said, that's a great knife. Why did you do it? You wouldn't let me owe you my life. So this was the next best thing. It's for you. I feel sacredly honored to have known Lou. I just wish I'd let him into my apartment that day. It was cold and wet and muddy. My freshly cleaned floor didn't mean that much in the first place. It already had knife holes poked all over it. Nice throw, Lou. And thanks. Wherever you are. We're even.